Chapter 26-28. In the immortal realm, there were many fourth form experts patrolling the mountains and rivers. Bang! Streaks of bloody mist exploded, spreading to dozens of miles away. Some young kings were unwilling to participate in the battle and hid in the mountains. But they couldn't escape the fourth form divine sense and were all killed mercilessly. 2 divine senses covered the entire heaven-suppressing prefecture. Yen Yunbei di Longtian, and at least a dozen other experts did not participate in the battle, but they were all kings. An unfamiliar fourth form expert wanted to kill them but was stopped by the ancient heavenly monarch. Ancient heavenly monarch, are you trying to break the rules? A deep voice scolded. A chilling aura filled the air and the killing intent activated the 7 million plus private army, the ancient massacre god, and the inner and outer sect army. Hua! The chess saint mobilized the army and their formation changed constantly. They devoured the power of the stars and even the stars were affected. Yen Yunbei, Medusa, Di Longtian, and the others were all protected in the center. Facing the fourth form, the 7 million strong army was ready to die. The army split into 2 and waited for the arrival of the fourth form experts. Hua! The war flag of Kuang Manor fluttered in the wind. The words Kuang Manor on the flag shook the heaven and earth, and the totem of the 9 continents cauldrons seemed to be able to suppress the heaven and earth. Xiao, Yen Yunbei Di Longtian, and the others were forced to come out from their closed-door training and they looked up at the 2 fourth form experts. We are not kings, we don't have to participate in the king battle. Yen Yunbei said. The unfamiliar fourth form expert frowned. There were many kings in the heaven-suppressing prefecture but none of them left. Was there not a single one? The ancient heavenly monarch said calmly, these people are not kings. If they are, I have my own information. The ancient heavenly monarch academy only accepts kings and I have information on all kings. Divine General Yun Kai, do you not trust me? But they are already kings. Divine General Yun Kai said firmly. The ancient heavenly monarch frowned and asked, so what? The king battle is for kings. As long as they are not kings, they have the right to not participate. Divine General Yun Kai took a deep breath and looked down at the army. He was intimidated by the aura of the Kuang Manor's army. He might not be afraid of this army, but he was wary of their cohesiveness. One person who was not afraid of death was scary, but the entire Kuang Manor was not afraid of death. Yen Yunbei, Medusa, Jian Chenxue, and Di Longtian were the strongest people left behind. Yi Chentian and the others were severely injured and would not be able to recover easily. The 4 inner sect elders looked at Divine General Yun Kai nervously. If he insisted on killing them and the ancient heavenly emperor did not intervene, the insane manor would suffer heavy losses. Seeing that Divine General Yun Kai was still unwilling to give up, the ancient heavenly emperor reminded him, there are loopholes in the rules, and they didn't break any rules. If you touch the crazed manor for no reason, I'm afraid there will be people who will fight to the death with your Divine General lineage. Divine General Yun Kai naturally knew about Yi Qinghan. In the Battle of North Godly Province, he faced off against Emperor Duan, Marquis Zun Long, and Tai Zun Ho. Then he defeated Taizhong's High Priest in South Godly Province. These were all military exploits. If one underestimated Yi Qinghan, they would definitely be attacked. Phew! Divine General Yun Kai shook his head and said, since the ancient heavenly emperor has spoken, I will give you a way out. After all, I don't want to be enemies with heaven-suppressing Marquis. Hearing this, Yen Yunbei and the others heaved a sigh of relief. The ancient heavenly emperor smiled faintly. Looking down at Yen Yunbei and the others, he said, I will give you 1,000 years. Whether you can enter the first realm or not, you must go to the Void Ridge. Otherwise, I will not be able to protect you. Yen Yunbei took the lead and cupped his fists, bowed and said, thank you, ancient heavenly emperor, for speaking up for justice. Thank you, Divine General Yun Kai, for showing mercy. We will definitely go to the Void Ridge within 1,000 years. The War of the Marquises would not end without tens of thousands of years. At that time, blood would flow like rivers and corpses would pile up like mountains. It was the same whether they went early or late. If their cultivation was not high enough, they would be courting death. Not only the insane manor people, but also the others. After the two fourth state experts left, Yan Yunbei, Di Longtian, and the others looked at each other and heaved a sigh of relief. Jian Chenxue said quickly enter seclusion. You must reach the golden immortal realm within 1,000 years. Everyone nodded and quickly returned to the northern divine island. Now that the fourth state experts had scanned this place, no one else would come. Without the other marquises, no one could threaten their safety. The chess saint began to train the army day and night. However, they had not attacked the revered dragon army in a short time. In the void, a floating continent spanned across the galaxy. All the stars were round or elliptical, but this continent was an irregular floating continent. From afar, it looked like a mountain range in the void. Therefore, it was named the Void Ridge. The occult law and order here were much stricter than in the immortal world. Therefore, the immortal world could not produce immortal emperors. However, this place could, and so could the ancient immortal world. If they wanted to start the War of the Marquises, they had to do it either in the ancient immortal world or here. Yi Qinghan led the insane manor people to the Void Ridge and landed in a mountain range. They were all very excited. Find a place with both offense and defense to set up camp. At the beginning of the War of the Marquises, we will only cultivate and watch. We will not participate in the battle, Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. Although Qitian Monkey King, Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian and the others wanted to fight, they knew that Yi Qinghan was worried that they would be at a disadvantage because they had just reached the immortal golden immortal realm. Therefore, no one objected. At this moment, 3 figures appeared out of thin air. 2 men and 1 woman. Their auras were very noble and elegant. The 3 siblings of the Chu Shi family. The leader was Chu Shi Junxian, the second brother Chu Shi Liyun, and the third sister Chu Shi Yao. The man was handsome and the woman was enchanting and beautiful. Moreover, they were all in the third realm. Although there were only 3 of them, they were a powerful force. Yi Qinghan turned around and saw the 3 approaching. He waved his hand to signal them not to be hostile. He also looked at them with a smile. Yi Qinghan of the Crazy Manor greets the 3 Taoists of the Chu Shi family. Yi Qinghan bowed and said. The leader of the group, Chu Shi Junxian, smiled faintly. He held the Liang sword and cupped his fists. Sect Master Yi, you are one of the few forces that are not hostile towards my Chu Shi lineage. Can we cooperate? Yi Qinghan smiled and said, that is because we are not of the ancient lineage. If Taoist brother Chu Shi is willing to cooperate, Qinghan will naturally welcome you. Supreme Yi stared at the 3 of them. Saliva flowed out of his mouth. He tugged at the corner of Yi Qinghan's clothes and said, Boss, there are beauties and they have treasures on them. Slap. Yi Qinghan casually slapped Supremacy Yi hard on the back of his head. He snorted and said, you can't always stare at beauties and treasures. Even if you stare, can you at least stare at those who don't have an owner? Chu Shi Yao was not angry. Instead, she looked at Supreme Yi with delight. Chu Shi Junxian laughed heartily and said, it's okay. Your little spiritual pet is really lovable. At that moment, it was the Kuang sect's turn to laugh. Even Gu Qingyu, who was usually reserved, was holding his stomach and laughing. This was the first time they had heard someone evaluate Supreme Yi like that. Among the hundreds of people, only Hua Lingtian nodded seriously. He felt that what Chu Shi Junxian said made sense. Supreme Yi's face turned red. He looked at the Kuang sect's people with dissatisfaction and said angrily, you guys are just jealous. The eyes of the world are clear. Look at your jealous expressions. How awkward is everyone's laughter. Yi Qinghan wiped the sweat from his forehead and said helplessly, yes, how awkward. You'd better stop talking. Otherwise, it will really be awkward later. Chu Shi Junxian and his siblings really did not understand Supreme Yi. Otherwise, they would not have evaluated him like that. Yi Qinghan did not want to waste time there, so he quickly interrupted the laughter and asked, Senior brothers and sisters, are there any places in the Void Ridge that have both offensive and defensive capabilities? We will not participate in the war in the early stages. Let's talk about it in a few thousand years. Chu Shi Junxian lowered her head and thought for a moment before saying, There are many city walls and palaces in the Void Ridge that have not been completely destroyed. The defensive capabilities are very good. However, it is also quite dangerous inside. There are many primordial immortal arrays that have not been erased by time. They are also very lethal. Not many people are willing to go there. Yi Qinghan shrugged and said confidently, "It's okay. I have a way to deal with the primordial immortal arrays and runes." Chapter 26-29. The reason why Yi Qinghan was confident that he could disregard the primordial immortal array and the killing rune was because he had comprehended the killing rune quintessence given to him by the old man in the Jingfan Mountain, Old Man Ouyangguan. Moreover, he had already passed by the vicinity of the Jingfan Mountain on his way here. He had sent Desolate Lord Yi and Stan Wuxia to invite Ouyangguan from the prison. With Chu Shixian leading the way, Yi Qinghan quickly led the group into the Void Ridge. The gravity and dharma of this place didn't change at all because the Void Ridge had left the ancient immortal realm. It was heavy and majestic. There were broken walls everywhere. Half of the ancient city walls had collapsed. Some talisman prohibitions still existed in the world, warning the common people that the primitive era was a glorious era and would never appear in the world again. The group walked in the Void Ridge with reverence. At this time, the main group hadn't arrived yet. Many factions began to occupy some territory without restraint. However, whether they could defend it was another matter. Yi Qinghan left a mark wherever he went, waiting for Desolate Lord Yi and Stan Wuxia to meet up. Stan Wuxia and Desolate Lord Yi were rushing over with an old man. Most of the prisoners in the prison were sent to Crazed Manor by Jingfan Manor. Only Ouyangguan was brought to the Void Ridge. The two brothers carried Ouyangguan as fast as lightning. They were wearing Crazed Manor's uniform. The word crazed was enough to intimidate ordinary factions. Even those in the fourth form didn't dare to stop the two. The two flashed and caught up to the main group 7 or 8 days later. At this moment, Yi Qinghan looked at Ouyangguan, who was doddering with age and whose face was flushed red. Yi Qinghan greets Mr. Ouyang. "Sorry for making you wait in the prison." Yi Qinghan immediately bowed. Ouyangguan had white hair and a youthful complexion. It seemed that he had been living well. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "Not bad. That kid from back then has become a big shot. I heard that you've become the heaven-suppressing marquis in Di Zhentian's place. I'm very happy." Yi Qinghan smiled and immediately got up to hold Ouyangguan's arm. He said to the group, "Let me introduce Ouyangguan, my savior. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to reconstruct my body. At least, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today. From today onward, he's my grand elder. Those of the same generation should call him martial uncle. Those of the younger generation should call him grandmaster. Do you understand?" Martial uncle. Grandmaster. The Crazed Manor and the private army's army. The King Realm Army. More than a dozen big shots bowed and called him martial uncle. Hundreds of kings called him grandmaster. This kind of honor was rare. Even in a big force, if one's cultivation couldn't keep up, he was destined to be eliminated. The disciple who became a big shot might even be stepped on by the other disciples. Ouyangguan looked at the Crazed Manor's people with a solemn and respectful expression. Although he was arrogant and unruly, he was also very touched. Good. All of you, get up. How can these old bones of mine accept your salutes?" Ouyangguan sighed. No matter how arrogant he was, he wouldn't dare to accept the greetings of so many kings. At this moment, the Bailing King beside Lin Wutian said with a smile, "Ouyangguan, do you still remember me?" Ouyangguan was stunned. He stared at the Bailing King and said in surprise, "Bailing King, the inheritor of the ancient path sword technique?" The Bailing King nodded and said, "I'm impressed. The arrogant King of Slaughter has someone to rely on for the rest of his life. Congratulations." The King of Slaughter, Ouyangguan, was much older than the Bailing King. However, they were both from the same era. The Bailing King and the King of Slaughter were both arrogant and unruly. However, Ouyangguan was harder to get along with. He was even a little crazy. In order to study the King of Slaughter, he dared to offend and scold anyone. That was why he was locked up by Jingfan Mountain. The king of slaughter, Ouyang laughed. His white hair fluttered in the wind. He was full of energy. He was less crazy and more wise. Zhang Fan talked to me before. I've calmed down a lot over the years. Sai, I was wrong back then. I shouldn't have been so stubborn. Ouyang was no longer as cold as before. He was like a madman, and his body was no longer dirty. Later on, he didn't stay in the prison. Instead, he was invited by Zhang Fan to join the Dao field. They often talked about Dao, and over the years, his state of mind had improved by leaps and bounds. Yi Qinghan looked at Ouyang change and felt happy for him from the bottom of his heart. Soon, Yi Qinghan left and introduced the people of the insane sect to Ouyang. Emperor Yi, Qitian Monkey King, Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian, and the others were all introduced. Ouyang, who had a high cultivation, had a good memory. He quickly remembered all the experts of the insane sect. The people of the insane sect respected this old man from the bottom of their hearts. Even though his cultivation was at the bottom, it didn't stop them from respecting him. A master for a day was a master for life. No matter how high their cultivation was, they had to respect him. Ouyang smiled and said, I have to thank Zhang Fan for all these years. I know that he treated me like this because of you. Karma is the cycle of reincarnation. If there's a cause, there's an effect. I just didn't expect the heavens to bestow me with such great karma. Yi Qinghan supported Ouyang and said with a smile, You should be the one who gave me everything. You don't have to be polite with us in the future. The insane sect is your home. The older generation of the insane sect agreed. They had always treated Yi Qinghan's benefactors as their own. Buzz, just as everyone was walking happily, a murderous sound suddenly rang out. The murderous aura seemed to contain the aura of an ancient beast, but it also seemed to contain the majesty of a supreme expert. The fourth form. Yi Qinghan was all too familiar with this aura. Defend. Elders in front, kings in the back. Protect Elder Ouyang. Yi Qinghan immediately drew his sword and walked forward. The tall mountain ahead blocked his line of sight. A wave of air rushed out, causing smoke and dust to rise. The three siblings, the Bailing King, and Lin Wuyan all drew their swords and walked forward, cautiously looking at the top of the mountain. Yi Qinghan looked at the top of the mountain. The aura was very slow, and it seemed to be there. The vicissitudes of life instantly covered 1,000 miles. He didn't want to wait any longer. He turned to Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian, and the others and said in a deep voice, Other than the Bailing King, Wu Tian, and the three brothers from the Chu clan, the rest of you stay here and don't get close to the mountain. These 5 were the strongest. As long as they cooperated with Yi Qinghan, they could force the fourth form expert to retreat. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Yi Qinghan held the heaven-suppressing saber and flew directly to the top of the mountain. The shroud fluttered from the ancient aura, and his black hair flew backward. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The shroud trembled, and the energy collided with the saber, producing a long whistle. Yi Qinghan's pupils constricted. He held the saber with both hands and crossed his legs, preparing to attack. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Chu Shijun and the others landed on Yi Qinghan's left and right sides. They maintained a good distance from each other so that they could defend and save each other. When they saw the scene on the other side of the mountain, their eyes widened, and their hearts almost exploded. Thump. Supreme martial artist Yi, who was squatting on Yi Qinghan's shoulder, fell off and screamed in shock, Motherfucker, a zombie. Whoosh. Without even thinking, Yi Qinghan left Yi Qinghan behind and rushed to the front of the Kuang sect. Hiss hiss hiss. Yi Qinghan and the others sucked in a breath of cold air, and a chill ran down their spines. This was because there was an ancient battlefield in front of them. The mountain peak was cut off, and the dense corpses had not completely rotted. The key was that an ancient person crawled out from under the corpses with an immortal sword in his hand. His aura made people's hair stand on end. His eyes were like sharp blades that directly pierced into their hearts. Lin Wuyan's cultivation was the weakest, but he was forced to vomit blood from the other party's gaze. Chu Shiyao was the second to vomit blood. She was a woman, and she had never seen such a terrifying person. His clothes were ragged, and the battle robe on his body was even scarier than the shroud. His eyes were shriveled, and he looked like a dried corpse. Even his flesh and blood were about to dry up, but he was still alive and moving. If an expert in the fourth form came here, they would probably be furious, let alone a few juniors. Chapter 2630. He was still alive. At this moment, Yi Qinghan, Chu Shijunxian, and the others were enraged. Lin Wutian and Chu Shiyao couldn't withstand a single glance from the other party. The former's cultivation was weaker, while the latter's mental state was weaker. Boom! The mummified ancient expert stared at Yi Qinghan and the others with his sunken eyes. The sword in his hand let out a clear whistle. His shriveled right hand slowly grasped the sword hilt with killing intent. No one recognized who this ancient powerhouse was, but they were certain that he wasn't from the Yen clan. Hummed at the ancient expert pulled out his sword. Sword chi pierced through everything. Yen Emperor, you're still alive. He wanted to fight even if he died. The ancient expert's strength was too terrifying. He pointed his sword at Yi Qinghan and walked with firm steps. The ancient expert's fourth form was definitely comparable to the 5 immortal emperors today. He could probably kill the current fourth form in an instant. Yi Qinghan was enraged. The heaven-suppressing saber in his hand couldn't protect him. Wait, I'm not the Yen Emperor. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and immediately said, Senior, the ancient immortal world was destroyed long ago. Even the ancient immortal world was torn apart. The war back then ended long ago. Yi Qinghan didn't dare to resist. He didn't even dare to fight now. Once he fought, he would have to use his peak strength and use the Human Dao Emperor Pagoda. Even if he could suppress this person, his identity would be exposed to countless experts. Who are you if you're not? I'm Su Jiuling, the #1 protector of the Eternal Void Emperor. Yen Emperor, you don't even dare to admit who you are now? Ha! The #1 emperor of the ancient immortal world. What a joke! The mummified body mocked. Yi Qinghan knew that he had the Yen Emperor's blood in his body. He also had the Yen Emperor's inheritance. It was normal for the mummified body to recognize him. The mummified body's soul was terrifyingly powerful. It was normal for it to be able to see through his bloodline. I can't hide anymore. I'll fight. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's aura changed and suddenly became countless times stronger. His figure rose. Boom! Yi Qinghan took the initiative to step into the primordial battlefield with his saber in hand. He pretended to be strong as he said, Since you've recognized me, I won't hide it any longer. Fourth form, Void 9 Spirits. Do you still have 10% of your combat strength left? At this moment, it was the Chu siblings' turn to explode. They looked at Yi Qinghan's back in disbelief. He's Flame Emperor? First Emperor of the ancient era? The 3 siblings looked at each other, their eyes filled with disbelief. Clear the perimeter of the battlefield. No one is allowed to come within a radius of 3,000 miles. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and said in a deep voice. Whoosh! The mark of the Yen Emperor Pagoda appeared on his forehead. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and held the Human Dao Emperor Pagoda in his palm. This battle was going to be his pinnacle battle. It was definitely going to be more dangerous than his battle with the High Priest. Whoosh whoosh whoosh! Lin Wutian and the 3 siblings of Chu Shi retreated quickly and shouted to the people of the Kuang sect, Clear the perimeter. No one is allowed to come close. Chase them out. At this moment, only the inheritor of the ancient path swordsmanship, the Bailing King, was stunned. He never expected Yi Qinghan to be from the Yen clan and the inheritor of the Human Dao Emperor Pagoda. However, the Bailing King did not have the orthodox primordial special bloodline. He only cultivated the ancient path swordsmanship. He was not hostile to Yi Qinghan. Otherwise, he would not be stunned. The Bailing King also retreated and began to help the Kuang sect clean up the battlefield. No one was allowed to come close. Fortunately, the noble battle was at the early stage. Those in the fourth form were patrolling the immortal world. Otherwise, they could easily sense the battle here. The Void Ridge was part of the ancient immortal world. The transmission of laws was not sensitive. As long as there was no one in the fourth form within 10,000 miles, no matter what the battle here was, they would not be able to sense the aura of the Human Dao Emperor Pagoda. Su Jiuling's combat power was less than 1% of his peak. Even if he did not die, he could not be compared to the current immortal emperor. At most, he was on par with those in the fourth form. However, it was still very scary. Yi Qinghan stepped into the battle zone and forced Su Jiuling to come closer. Su Jiuling only saw Yi Qinghan's bloodline but did not see the human Dao Emperor Pagoda. He was forced to retreat by the aura of the Emperor Pagoda. He did not dare to come close and his eyes were full of anger. Outside the perimeter, more than 10 golden immortals of the Kuang sect, along with 3 third-degree cultivators and the Biling King, drew their swords and rushed to the perimeter. They chased away anyone they saw and killed those who did not retreat. The Kuang sect is handling matters. All deities, retreat. The heroes of the Kuang sect began to rush to the perimeter like a net. The battle flag swayed. The small and medium-sized forces did not dare to act rashly. Moreover, the Kuang sect did not kill them directly. They all retreated quickly. They retreated 3,000 miles and poured down like a flood. Boom! Jiang Jingtian stabbed his spear into a kunai mountain ridge, intimidating dozens of nobles. He said coldly, "Retreat another 300 miles. Otherwise, it will not be a warning." Retreat. Lin Wutian pointed his sword at a large group. The aura of the ancient path sword technique was extremely sharp. Boom! Qitian Monkey King held the dark iron divine staff in his hand and smashed it into a rotten city wall. The experts who were 3,000 miles away from the battlefield had no choice but to retreat. I'll say it again. The Kuang sect is handling matters. All deities, retreat. If you don't blame us for starting the noble battle in advance. Gu Qingyu said coldly. The heroes who were forced to retreat 3,000 miles were furious. They glared at the Kuang sect's troops and were unwilling to retreat. Buzz. Emperor Yi played the zither. The sound of the zither was bleak and filled with endless murderous intent. The 13 golden immortals of the Kuang sect, the Biling King, and the 3 Chu masters each guarded a direction. The power of the Kuang sect suppressed dozens of forces and made them not dare to act rashly. The heroes of the Kuang sect drew their swords. 10,000 swords returned to the sect. The sword Dao roared and caused 10,000 swords to greet the emperor. Boom! Stan Wuxie, Desolate Lord Yi, and the others were extremely domineering. They took the initiative to approach the enemy, hoping to force the people who were standing in front of the Kuang sect's troops to retreat and leave Yi Qinghan the largest battlefield. The Kuang sect is too much. A third-stage god priest questioned in a deep voice. The Kuang sect has never taken the initiative to bully others. If you are willing to retreat another 300 miles, we will see if you will give face to the Kuang sect on the battlefield in the future. Yan Ao stepped forward calmly. Although he was only at the great circle of the mystic immortal realm, many of the golden immortals of the Kuang sect were inferior to him. His aura was the aura of a leader. Ordinary people could not compare to him. Fiery King was a first-grade marquis. Although his combat power was slightly inferior, his reputation was not inferior to the first or second-grade golden immortals. So it's Fiery King, a first-grade marquis. This old man has been disrespectful. The third-stage god priest immediately gave him a certain amount of respect. If Yan Ao had not led the army to block the Taijiang celestial race's army, who knew how many territories would have been razed to the ground? Therefore, most of the god priests were very grateful to Yan Ao. Give my Kuang mansion some face, and in the future, my Kuang mansion will return with a lot of face. This marquis will remember your origins. Let's see if you are willing to give me Yan Ao, and give my Kuang mansion some face. Retreat another 300 li. Yan Ao looked down from above. His Yanjun marquis robe fluttered in the wind. His aura was overwhelming. Hiss! The experts looked at each other. Yan Ao had already said so. If they did not retreat, it would not be good. Retreat! The third-stage god priest immediately waved his hand and led his people to retreat. Since the third-stage god priest had retreated, how would the others dare to not retreat? The thousands of people were driven more than 3,000 miles by the Kuang sect. At the rear, Yi Qinghan directly stabbed the heaven-suppressing saber into the mountain ridge behind him. His palms formed a seal and the Human Tao Emperor Pagoda expanded infinitely. The power of the Human Tao filled the sky and covered the battlefield. Boom! You should not have recognized my identity. Yi Qinghan's aura was so strong that even the burial cloth was shattered. The blood of the Yen clan surged as if the first immemorial emperor had descended. Human Tao is determined by the heavens. Whoosh-da-whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed through the sky. Countless figures broke through the void. In the blink of an eye, more than 30 Yen clan great divine arts were displayed. Yellow sand was swept up and the aura of the Human Tao Emperor Pagoda spread for more than 2,000 miles. Chapter 2631. Human Tao Emperor Pagoda. Even the immortal emperor wouldn't dare say he could resist the ancestral weapon of the Yen clan, let alone this immemorial living dead. The immemorial living dead had no blood and his body was shriveled like a mummy. Facing the Human Tao Emperor Pagoda, half of his combat strength was suppressed. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yi Qinghan used dozens of grand techniques of the human race and used almost all of his strength. Yen Zhu's right arm glowed with divine light and didn't hide his combat strength at all. Boom! Yen Zhu's right arm punched through mountains and rivers and attacked the immemorial living dead, Su Jiuling. The Human Tao Emperor Pagoda was pulled by Yi Qinghan to suppress Su Jiuling from the sky. Su Jiuling looked at Yi Qinghan's right arm in horror and growled, "Yen Zhu's right arm, roar!" Whoosh! Su Jiuling's sword shattered the void. He could only rely on Yi Qinghan. He couldn't control Yen Zhu's right arm and wanted to suppress Yi Qinghan by force. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 10,000 sword shadows were extremely sharp. This was the true power of an immemorial living dead. Even Yi Qinghan couldn't withstand a single blow. Bang! Boom! Yen Zhu's right arm slammed into Su Jiuling's divine sword. His mighty aura crushed the 10,000 daos and shattered the spiritual seas around the battlefield. Yen Zhu's right arm was fine, but all of Yi Qinghan's grand techniques were destroyed and his body was blown away. The moment he flew back, Yi Qinghan used all of his strength to control the Human Tao Emperor Pagoda to suppress Su Jiuling. Space was distorted by the pagoda. A beam of divine light shot out from the bottom of the pagoda and enveloped Su Jiuling. A gate appeared at the bottom like a gate of immortals, trying to suck Su Jiuling into the pagoda. Su Jiuling roared. His immortal aura crushed the myriad Tao. His sword continued to unleash sword energy, as expected of a primordial immortal general. As the first protector of the primordial void immortal emperor, he could stop the attack of the Human Tao Emperor Pagoda even though he was only a corpse and a soul. The Flame Clan's aura split the sky and covered the earth, destroying mountains and rivers. The archaic killing patterns at the center of the battlefield were activated, and divine radiance filled the sky. Countless corpses were shattered, and the shockwaves reached Yi Qinghan. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yi Qinghan dodged in the air. The shroud was shattered and his flesh exploded. However, his eyes were fixated on Su Jiuling, who was suppressed by the pagoda. He waved his hand and took out the heaven-suppressing saber. Under the illumination of the divine light, the heaven-suppressing saber was in high spirits. Boom! Yi Qinghan held the saber with both hands and activated the power of the immortal emperor within the heaven-suppressing saber. Green light soared into the sky, and together with the dozens of great divine arts of the Yen tribe, he became one with the saber. Heavy frenzy attack. I am invincible. Yi Qinghan's aura soared. The heaven-suppressing saber emitted a green divine radiance as it broke through the void. At this moment, Yi Qinghan possessed the power of an emperor. The profundities of the myriad laws were clearly visible, but difficult to understand. It was even more ruthless and violent, enough to kill a fourth form. Su Jiuling and the Yen Emperor Pagoda fought with their lives on the line. Perhaps only a fourth form cultivator like him could fight against the Yen Emperor Pagoda. The fourth form cultivators would be directly suppressed by the Yen Emperor Pagoda. Unfortunately, he could only fight against an unawakened human Emperor Pagoda and could not completely destroy it. At this moment, he did not have the power to face Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan attacked with his saber. This saber contained the power to kill a fourth form cultivator, But there was also the possibility of death. Even if he died on the battlefield, he would not regret it. Su Jiuling represented 90% of the ancient people. He was stubborn, and even if he died, he would not hesitate. Unfortunately, Yi Qinghan was even more stubborn. Since he had made his move, he had to suppress Su Jiuling today, even if it meant death. Blood dyed the sky red, drawing a line of fire. This saber was unstoppable. It cut through the rainbow light from the human emperor pagoda and went straight inside, arriving in front of Su Jiuling. Su Jiuling's eyes were ferocious, and his sunken pupils were even more terrifying. He flicked his wrist and changed his sword techniques quickly. He actually gave up on resisting the human emperor pagoda and wanted to kill Yi Qinghan directly. Die! Hamda whoosh! This was the true myriad sword's return to origin. It commanded the sword Dao, and the heavenly Dao rumbled like the beating of an emperor's drum, spreading rapidly in the void. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Countless immortal swords had not decayed, and their immortal runes were still present. Their profundities soared into the sky. At this moment, Su Jiuling mobilized them, and they all rushed towards Yi Qinghan. Hamda Puchi! Su Jiuling was a master of the sword Dao, and this attack was extremely short. In just a flash, the sword pierced through the sky and arrived in front of the heaven-suppressing saber. There was a crisp sound, as if the sword had cut through tofu. The heaven-suppressing saber was directly pierced through. Yi Qinghan's pupils constricted. He did not change his saber technique, but the veins on his right hand bulged. He gathered all his strength for the final attack, ready to die together with his opponent. Boom! Puchied in the midst of the lightning and thunder, the suffocating tension and scene made Su Jiuling and Yi Qinghan feel that death was upon them. The saber and sword were only an inch away from each other. The heaven-suppressing saber was pierced through, and the third immortal Emperor Qingzun's power was affected. It overflowed and swept in all directions. The airwaves spread for thousands of miles, and the rotten rocks were shattered. Bang! Boom! Yi Qinghan's long legs crushed the ground, and his holy golden body erupted. His flesh and blood exploded, and he used all his strength to suppress Su Jiuling. Bam bam bam. The ground beneath their feet cracked, and their expressions were ferocious. Abhijnas and Taoist arts rumbled endlessly. Even though the saber and sword were immobilized, their limbs were still powerful weapons. They clashed continuously, and even their teeth became sharp weapons. Bam, bam, bam. Yi Qinghan's left hand pressed down on the saber, and his right hand freed up space. Yan Zu's arm punched at Su Jiuling. Bam. Cracked at Su Jiuling's body did not have much flesh left. Yi Qinghan's punch broke his bones, and his body flew backward. Buzzed out whoosh. Whooshed at this moment, the Emperor Yen Tower shone brightly, as if it had awakened on its own. The door to the 7th floor opened automatically, and an even more terrifying light shot out. It was like an extreme divine light, and directly knocked Su Jiuling into the 7th floor of the Emperor Yen Tower. After the human Emperor Yen Tower awakened on its own, it suppressed Su Jiuling, and then disappeared into Yi Qinghan's sea of consciousness in a flash. Bam! Yi Qinghan's body went limp, and he fell to the ground. The immemorial battlefield of the past was no longer the same. This battle seemed simple, but Yi Qinghan had escaped death countless times. If it wasn't for the heaven-dominating saber, the right arm of the Yen ancestor, and the mortal Dao royal pagoda, he wouldn't have been able to stop this living corpse even if he was missing one of them. Yan Zu's arm and the human Emperor Yan Zu's pagoda were indeed powerful, but he could not even use 1,000th of their power. Otherwise, he would not have been afraid of these people. Thump! Yi Qinghan gasped for breath. His left shoulder was pierced by a sharp sword energy, and blood flowed endlessly. It would not heal in a short period of time. The heaven-suppressing saber in his hand was pierced, and 3 strands of venerable immortal emperor's power were used up. This was a great loss. The shroud was broken. Yi Qinghan ignored his fatigue and quickly threw away the corpses. He took the immortal ancient battle robes from a few powerful corpses and put them on himself. The defensive power of these immortal ancient battle robes was extremely abnormal, and after being soaked in blood for countless years, it was even more abnormal. Even the last bit of Yen clan's aura was withdrawn from his body. Huff! Yi Qinghan's face was pale as he climbed back to the peak of the mountain in a sorry state. He lay there, feeling a burning pain in his body. The order in his body had been severely damaged, and it would not be repaired in a short period of time. However, at this moment, the people of the crazed sect could feel that the battle was weakening. The three Chu siblings quickly flew back. Even if Yi Qinghan was defeated, the opponent was at the end of his rope. The three of them together could still suppress the Archean living corpse. Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian, and the others leaped more than 100 meters and constantly rushed back, afraid that they would be half a step too late. Chapter 2632. Woo woo woo. Yi Qinghan lay on the mountain ridge, manipulating the power of People Dao. The wounds on his body slowly healed. His body exuded a faint pressure, and the faint golden light almost seeped into the shroud. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Chu Shi and his siblings flew through the air and landed not far from Yi Qinghan. However, they didn't approach because Yi Qinghan was still recuperating from his injuries and was in a tense state. If they approached him, they might suffer a thunderous counterattack from him. Whoosh whoosh. A moment later, Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, Qitian Monkey King, Emperor Yi, Lin Wutian, and more than 10 experts landed around Yi Qinghan and guarded him with their swords. The Bailing King didn't approach and had a complicated look in his eyes. Yen clan was a taboo in the immortal world. He himself was of the immemorial bloodline. Although he didn't have much enmity towards Yi Qinghan, he more or less disliked this clan. Soon, the majority of the Kuang Mansion's troops arrived and guarded Yi Qinghan. They were extremely vigilant. At this moment, the three Chu siblings looked at each other. They didn't expect to meet someone from the Yen clan here. Wasn't Chu Shi's bloodline hated by the immortal world because of the Yen clan? No wonder I had a strange feeling when I first saw him. He's from the Yen clan. Chu Shiyao said in surprise. Phew. Chu Shijun exhaled. It was both good news and bad news that Yi Qinghan was from the Yen clan. The good news was that Yi Qinghan was from the Yen clan, so they didn't have to worry about cooperation. However, the bad news was that Yi Qinghan was from the Yen clan. Once his identity was exposed, the three of them would be in trouble. Time passed slowly. The sun rose and set, day after day. Yi Qinghan's soul was extremely tense. The sword chi attack from Su Jiuling had almost injured his foundation. This kind of immemorial bloodline expert was too terrifying. He couldn't imagine how Su Jiuling had survived such a long time and slept until now. Whoosh. The Yen clan's blood aura fluctuated, continuously purifying the sharp sword chi in their bodies. After a few months, the people in the fourth state had all entered the Void Ridge. The crazy sect blocked many forces, including the Primordial God clan and the immemorial Ancient Immortal clan. The Noble Plane battle hadn't started yet, and no one wanted to offend this new force. At this moment, Yi Qinghan woke up. He opened his eyes and felt as if his organs were about to explode. His right arm was especially sore. Crack crack crack. Yi Qinghan stood up and shook his body. His bones cracked. After a long while, he came back to his senses and looked at the outside of the mountain. There were at least tens of thousands of nobles gathered. They all wanted to cross the mountain and find a suitable place to set up camp. However, they were all blocked outside by the people of the Kuang clan. Chu Shixian nodded silently and looked deeply at the depths of the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. There were many treasures hidden here. If not for the killing runes, he would have already taken out the immemorial immortal treasures. This time, he would definitely not let them go. Be careful. I'm afraid there aren't many direct descendants of the Yen clan left. If you die, the Yen clan might really be wiped out. Chu Shixian reminded in a deep voice. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and nodded. After that, he and Ouyang Guan slowly stepped into the depths. There were corpses everywhere. Some of the corpses had killing runes hidden under them. Anyone who touched them would die. There were no exceptions. Although Ouyang Guan was excited, he was also very cautious. His eyes were like pearls as he stopped with every step. There was a special connection between killing runes. Different professions were like different mountains. Even Yi Qinghan might not be able to completely understand the killing runes. However, it was a pity for Ouyang. After a while, Ouyang held a withered branch and pointed at a piece of gravel. He said, "There is a high-grade killing rune divine restriction there. It hasn't been destroyed yet. Once it is activated, everything within a radius of 3 miles will be destroyed." Yi Qinghan waved his hand and used gravity craze to carve a rune nearby. Yi Qinghan was in charge of cleaning up the corpses. He quickly went deeper. There were too many immemorial god corpses and Yen clan corpses here. Yi Qinghan looked at the corpses everywhere. He still had to take care of the killing rune divine restriction, so it was a little slow to clean up. He summoned the 12 immemorial gods. Collect all the corpses. Put the Yen clan corpses to one side. Put the primordial god clan corpses, the primordial ancient immortal clan corpses, and the primordial special bloodline corpses separately. I want to study them. Here, the 12 immemorial gods didn't dare to disobey. They quickly placed the corpses on both sides. Yi Qinghan and Ouyang followed behind. They quickly confirmed whether there were any killing rune divine restrictions nearby. After a while, they had cleaned up hundreds of corpses. They gradually went deeper into the ancient building. The deeper they went, the stronger the corpses were when they were alive. At this moment, an immemorial god suddenly screamed. His body twisted as he fell to the ground and wailed. His body kept twitching, and in the blink of an eye, he died on the spot. His face was no longer bathed in divine light. Instead, it was green and purple. Corpse poison? Yi Qinghan's eyes narrowed. He saw that there were worms moving around in the immemorial god's corpse. He immediately took a few steps back with Ouyang. His expression changed. It's the immemorial corpse worm. It's extremely fast and poisonous. It can instantly kill a first-level immemorial realm cultivator. Ouyang warned. Chapter 2633. Ouyang always had a calm temperament, but when he saw the immemorial corpse worm today, his expression changed. Yi Qinghan and Ouyang retreated more than 10 steps and ordered the 11 dark priests to retreat in all directions. Yi Qinghan stared at the dead body of the dark priest. In just a few breaths of time, the corpse worm turned from one corpse worm to several corpse worms, followed by hundreds and then countless. It was impossible to count. The immemorial corpse worm reproduced too quickly. Countless young corpse worms were crawling inside the corpse, devouring the blood and flesh of the dark priest. From the outside, the corpse looked undamaged, but inside, it was an empty shell. Even the bone marrow had been sucked dry. The dark priest's cultivation was still too weak for the corpse worms. Some fourth-form immemorial corpses were enough for the immemorial corpse worms to devour for countless years. The mother worm is the most aggressive. After it invades the body, it will quickly produce larvae. The larvae will cooperate with the immemorial corpse worm to devour the immortal body. When the corpse's energy is exhausted, the mother worm will devour the larvae. Be careful. Don't let the mother worm enter the body. Otherwise, no one can stop the invasion of the immemorial corpse worm. Ouyang warned. Yi Qinghan knew nothing about the immemorial corpse worm. At this time, he was glad that the corpses he touched didn't have it. Otherwise, he would be dead for sure. This immemorial corpse worm. Does it have a soul and intelligence? Can it be tamed? Yi Qinghan stared at the corpse of the dark priest and whispered. Ouyang didn't know much about immemorial history. After thinking for a moment, he said, I once read some historical records. There was a record about the immemorial corpse worm. In the immemorial era, people raised this type of immemorial corpse worm to kill people. However, the worm was merciless and even the master was bitten by it. In the end, they died tragically. From then on, no one raised them. Essence blood, immortal spirit energy, god power, and even spirit sense power were all food for the immemorial corpse worm. There was nothing it didn't eat. Yi Qinghan looked around. There were countless corpses. Who knew which one had an immemorial corpse worm? Why weren't there any immemorial corpse worms in the corpses I saw before? I found a lot of corpses in the gloomy divine land and a floating ancient land of the Yen clan, but I didn't see any immemorial corpse worms. There were countless corpses on the battlefield where I fought Su Jiuling, but I didn't see any immemorial corpse worms either. Senior, do you know why? Yi Qinghan asked curiously. Ouyangguan looked around and found that the climate here was pleasant. There was no coldness and viciousness of the primordial battlefield. Every corpse looked almost the same when they died. All of them had their souls directly destroyed by a great divine ability. The corpses were still well preserved. Not much of the essence qi in their bodies was lost when they died. Because the one who killed this place might be the Flame Emperor, or it might be the Flame Ancestor himself. The Flame Emperor has a higher chance. Otherwise, there shouldn't be other Flame Ancestor corpses here. Ouyangguan speculated, their corpses are preserved too well. They were killed in an instant. If I'm not wrong, the Yen Emperor must have used the Human Dao art, the soul-reversing Grand Divine art. It instantly covered the entire Jiangnan Immortal Valley, destroying the souls and preserving the corpses. The climate here is very good, suitable for the breeding of immemorial corpse worms. Ka. Yi Qinghan clenched his fists and took a deep breath. Looking around, there was no lack of fourth-form Archean experts, god generals, and some with special bloodlines. Just how strong was the Flame Emperor? Yi Qinghan couldn't help but wonder how strong the Flame Emperor was. It was unimaginable, but he must be much stronger than the 5 immortal emperors. He wasn't called the number 1 emperor for nothing. Yi Qinghan's eyes were sore. He looked up at the sky as if he didn't want to let his tears fall. The primordial war was too cruel. It was different from the War of the Kings. It involved the entire immortal world and the ancient immortal world. No one could escape from the fate of the immortal world, including the weak and the old. Is it necessary? Both sides will suffer. No, both sides will perish. There is no winner. Yi Qinghan lamented. His vicissitudes of life filled the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. It even rushed to Guangzhong, the Bailing King, and the 3 Chu siblings who were guarding outside the valley. The 11 dark priests looked at the battlefield and seemed to have realized something. They were affected by Yi Qinghan's aura. They lowered their heads and thought about whether the Taijiang celestial tribe's persistence was right or wrong. Chu Shijun appeared behind Yi Qinghan. He looked at Yi Qinghan and sighed. He couldn't help but be shocked. This back view was too familiar. He seemed to have seen it somewhere before. Chu Shijun Xian's soul trembled, and a bright light flashed. He thought of the painting in the ancestral shrine. There was only a back view, and it was almost identical to this back view. However, the clansmen no longer knew who that back view belonged to, and why it was hung in the ancestral shrine. Soon, Chu Shijun came back to his senses. He felt that it was just a coincidence. The painting in the ancestral shrine couldn't be Yi Qinghan. He went forward and asked, Sect Master Yi, what happened? Yi Qinghan also came back to his senses. He looked at Chu Shijun and pointed at the corpse of the dark priest. He whispered, this immemorial corpse worm is blocking our way. Chu Shijun raised his eyebrows. Not only was he not afraid, but he was also excited. He said eagerly, I didn't expect to find it so easily. One of my ancestors raised an immemorial corpse worm and left behind a lot of records. Unfortunately, he was devoured at the last moment. However, he left behind a lot of records. I have studied them thoroughly. I should be able to tame it. After saying that, Chu Shijun waved his hand and took out a jade bottle made of special material. It was filled with runes and had the aura of the immemorial corpse worm. He then pointed the mouth of the bottle at the corpse of the dark priest and placed it on the ground. Yi Qinghan frowned and warned, Dao brother, be careful. This thing is terrifyingly fast. Chu Shijun looked like an immortal and said confidently, Sect Master Yi, don't worry. This bottle is the universal bottle that my ancestor used to raise immemorial corpse worms. The aura inside can attract immemorial corpse worms. Once they enter, they can forget about coming out. Sure enough, in just 3 breaths, there were no more worms moving around the corpse of the dark priest. The countless larvae were all devoured by the immemorial corpse worm mother. It then broke open the corpse of the dark priest. It was about a finger long and looked very horrifying. Its skin was blood red, but it didn't smell bad. Instead, it had a medicinal fragrance. This kind of immemorial corpse worm had devoured countless essence qi and blood of the god race. It was one of the best medicinal ingredients. Refining an immemorial corpse worm could refine an immemorial demon god pill. It could even allow a god shrine to instantly condense an immemorial godhead. However, the refining method of the immemorial demon god pill had been lost for a long time. The immemorial corpse worm quickly charged into the universal bottle. The moment it entered the bottle, it quickly formed a seal and sealed the bottle. Chapter 2634. Once they entered the Qiankuan bottle, the immemorial corpse worms frantically rolled and gnawed, but they couldn't break out of the bottle. The Qiankuan bottle looked like it was only the size of a palm, but the space inside was very big. It couldn't hold the entire Qiankuan bottle, but it was enough to capture demons and monsters. The immemorial corpse worms were completely floating inside. They looked like they were crazily gnawing, but they were actually just rolling around in that small space. Chu Shixian excitedly held the bottle in his hand and said, "As long as I can successfully raise a batch of immemorial corpse worms, I will definitely be invincible." Yi Qinghan, on the other hand, was uneasy. Since this thing could backfire on its owner, it meant that it was extremely dangerous. The ancestors of Chu Shi's lineage had all died to the immemorial corpse worm, so Chu Shi Junxian might not be able to escape. "Be careful," Yi Qinghan whispered. Chu Shixian didn't mind at all. He seemed to be looking forward to catching the immemorial corpse worms and took the initiative to help clean up the corpses. He wanted to find a few more immemorial corpse worms, but they were very rare. After half a month of cleaning up the corpses in the valley, they only found a total of 3 immemorial corpse worms. Even though they only found 3 immemorial corpse worms, Chu Shixian still felt that he had gained a great advantage. At this moment, he was glad that he didn't casually flip through the corpses. Otherwise, he wouldn't know how he died. This was because they found more than 1,000 places with divine runes that were extremely lethal. Half of the divine runes had yet to be activated, and their power was terrifying. Looking at the ancient buildings, the real treasures were here. Back then, the war was in a hurry and there was no time to fight for the treasures. Therefore, even if the Yen tribe won the war, they didn't have time to enter the buildings to search for the treasures. Even the corpses of the Yen tribe were left here. Yi Qinghan saw Chu Shixian looking at the ancient buildings and knew that there must be a lot of treasures here. He returned to the entrance of the valley and set up a large number of divine runes with Ouyang Guan, covering the entire entrance. Anyone who dared to barge in would definitely die. After that, Yi Qinghan left behind 300 kings to patrol above the valley. The older golden immortal experts of the Mad Sect all entered the ancient buildings to search for treasures. There were still some hidden divine runes in the buildings, but they were quickly discovered by Ouyang Guan. He first marked them so that the golden immortal experts could avoid them. Later on, Ouyang Guan would study them and break them open. After the thousands of intact ancient buildings and a large number of damaged palaces were all cleaned up, the elders of the Mad Sect's elders rushed in. Treasures belonged to those who were fated to obtain them. Yi Qinghan and Chu Shijunxian did not think that the other party would be dissatisfied with having more treasures. Yi Qinghan and Sovereign Yi led a group of insane sect's elders into one of the palaces. Ouyang Guan led another group into another palace. Chu Shi, Junxian, and her 2 siblings entered the 3rd ancient building alone. The 3 groups entered the palaces one after another and began to search for the treasures inside. Countless treasures had already decayed. Only a few special ancient divine weapons were still hanging on the walls. Di Longtian, Si Wuxie, and the others followed Yi Qinghan and quickly took down the divine weapons and went into the various rooms to search. They even found some useless antiques such as incense burners, locks, and so on. They didn't know what they were used for, but the Mad Sect never looked down on them. These things could be sold for a great price. Some ancient families and rich families like these things the most. Supreme Yi had already left Yi Qinghan. His nose was very sensitive as he shuttled through the rooms. Yi Qinghan stood in the hall and stared at the ancient painting of mountains and rivers. He couldn't come back to his senses for a long time. The majestic mountains and rivers were as beautiful as a painting. The rolling pines displayed the ancient primordial era in a vivid and lifelike manner. It was as if the real primordial era was being displayed in front of him. This was a work of art that could immerse one in its beauty and calm one's restless heart. It was very beneficial for the stability of one's Tao heart. Ugh. I'm rich. Just as Yi Qinghan was immersed in this divine painting, Supreme Yi suddenly screamed. Yi Qinghan licked the corner of his mouth with the tip of his tongue. He waved his hand and took away the divine painting. Then, he quickly stepped into the room where Supreme Yi screamed. At this time, Di Longtian and the others rushed over without hesitation. However, the room was very empty. There were only some bookshelves and no books. Only Supreme Yi grinned and said, "I'm just teasing you. It's just some empty bookshelves." Yi Qinghan sneered and said, "What do you want so many ancient books for? Do you think you can use them alone? Take them out and share them with everyone." Obviously, the ancient books here were very well preserved, but they were all hidden in the dark divine ring by Supreme Yi. Supreme Yi's face turned red. He patted his face and said to himself regretfully, "Damn, why did my self-control become so bad?" Di Longtian, Si Wuxia, and Desolate Lord Yi all surrounded Supreme Yi and stretched out their hands to ask for them. Helpless, Supreme Yi could only take out all the ancient books that he hid. There were many great divine arts, and ancient records. Yi Qinghan was not interested in these ancient divine arts. He had many secret arts that he had not had the time to cultivate. There was no need for him to fight with the younger generation for these divine arts. He slowly walked in the room and kept knocking on the wall. It seemed like there was a secret compartment. There were also some places that were empty. The transmission of divine energy was only blocked for a while before it flowed smoothly. However, the wall was made of special materials. Yi Qinghan used the strength of his right arm and almost pushed the wall down, but he did not manage to open the secret door. Looking around the square room, he found that only the bookshelves were fixed. There were no other things hanging. "Move these bookshelves and see," Yi Qinghan said seriously. The few of them tried to move a bookshelf, but they did not move it. Only the bookshelf in Di Longtian's hand moved to the left. Creak bang! The wall in front of Yi Qinghan suddenly split open, and an entrance appeared. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Just as lightning flashed, a few pitch-black crossbow bolts flew towards Yi Qinghan. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's body twisted, and his right arm pierced through space. He was as fast as lightning and actually caught 5 of the bolts. The last bolt pierced through the bookshelf and directly pierced through the wall. Di Longtian and the others were scared silly. If this crossbow arrow pierced through their bodies, it would probably destroy their life force. Yi Qinghan's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He looked at the pitch-black bolt in his hand. This bolt was extremely poisonous. Luckily, the Flame Ancestor's right arm was immune to poison. Otherwise, he would not even know how he died today. Gulp! Yi Qinghan swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said with a hoarse voice, "Don't barge in. I will go in and take a look." Tap! Yi Qinghan slowly stepped into the hidden room. The room was very dark, and there was only a red jade emitting a dim rainbow light. The temperature in the room was almost constant, and there was no cold, damp, or strange smell. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took down the hanging red jade. He found that half of the red jade was emitting warmth, while the other half was emitting cold air. The immemorial yin-yang red jade could change a person's physique. As long as one refined this yin-yang red jade, they would be able to obtain the immemorial yin-yang body. They would be able to control life and death with a wave of their hand. This kind of immemorial yin-yang red jade was very rare. Yi Qinghan held the immemorial yin-yang red jade and looked at the metal box on the table in the depths of the hidden room. The words, "Immemorial Yin-Yang Immortal Codex," were engraved on it. This was not an immemorial divine technique, but an ancient secret technique. It was not separated by race, nor was it a special body. It was just a body that was formed after birth. It would not be hostile to the Yen race. Yi Qinghan let out a breath of turbid air. A treasure that could be hidden by the Jiangnan Immortal Valley was definitely not simple. Chapter 2635. The immemorial yin-yang immortal canon was a legendary physique in the immemorial era. In order to refine the immemorial yin-yang jade, not only did one need the immemorial yin-yang physique, but one also needed to control the two profound laws of yin and yang. In addition, it was said that only one immemorial yin-yang immortal emperor had cultivated this physique. Yi Qinghan opened the immortal canon's metal box. There was only a yin-yang sword and an immortal canon inside. The opening was filled with loneliness and helplessness. Throughout my life, I was invincible. I saw through yin and yang, saw through myself. No inheritance, no family. Life is death, death is life. Standing at the peak, I am leaving. The immortal canon will be given to the fated one. Yi Qinghan frowned. This immemorial yin-yang immortal emperor was too arrogant. He actually thought that he was standing at the peak. What about the Yen ancestor? Did they not fight before? Or did this immemorial yin-yang immortal emperor disappear when the Yen ancestor became a half-martial ancestor? I am leaving? Yi Qinghan muttered to himself. Where did this immemorial yin-yang immortal emperor go? No one knew. The immortal canon only said this sentence. The second page contained the contents of the immemorial yin-yang immortal canon. However, it was difficult to understand. Even with Yi Qinghan's monstrous physique, the qi and blood in his body almost froze when he cultivated the first profound. He could not cultivate it at all. One must have the immemorial yin-yang physique to cultivate it. Yi Qinghan scratched his head. Among the people he knew, only Jian Shenxue and Li Peiza had the immemorial yin-yang physique. However, Li Peiza was nurtured by the ancient heavenly emperor. This immortal canon must have been given to Jian Shenxue. Yi Qinghan took out the yin-yang sword. Half of the yin-yang sword was yin and the other half was yang. It was the Taigu Emperor's sword. Although it had not awakened, it still had a monstrous aura. It was hundreds of times stronger than the Scorching Sun sword and the Yen clan's Heaven sword. If it was not for the Yen ancestor's right arm, this yin-yang sword could directly kill him through the sword sheath. Buzz! Buzzed at the yin-yang sword vibrated a few times. The Emperor's sword was about to be unsheathed, but Yi Qinghan pressed it down with his right hand. It seemed that the power of the Yen Zu's arm had been recognized by the yin-yang sword. After a moment, the yin-yang sword returned to silence. There was no longer any sound, and even the Emperor's power no longer erupted. It is indeed a good sword, the Taigu Emperor's sword. Unfortunately, I cannot use it, and neither can Wuden. Yi Qinghan sighed. Perhaps only Jian Shenxue was suitable to use it. Yi Qinghan hid the Taigu Emperor's sword in his sleeve and stepped out of the secret compartment. Di Longtian and the others were still anxiously waiting. As soon as they saw Yi Qinghan come out, they immediately went to greet him. Father, how is it? What treasures are inside? Desolate Lord Yi asked excitedly. Supreme Yi was even more salivating. He stretched out his hand and asked, Boss, everyone has a share. Give me some. Yi Qinghan glanced at the few juniors who were swearing solemnly and said lightly, There is an emperor's sword, an immortal scripture, and a piece of immemorial yin-yang jade. It is only suitable for people with cold yin physiques. None of you can use it. I will leave it to Shenxue. Sigh. Supreme Yi sighed as if he had lost a treasure. However, the others did not mind. It was the same to give it to anyone. Moreover, Jian Shenxue was the matriarch of the insane sect. Her status was definitely not lower than Emperor Ye's. Emperor Yi naturally would not be jealous. The good things had always been his. Now, he should leave some for Jian Shenxue. At this time, Ouyangguan was searching in another palace with Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, Qitian Monkey King, and the others. Gu Qingyu and the others were searching for treasures. Suddenly, an ancient aura rushed in all directions, and the palace almost collapsed. Boomed at the sound shook the sky and rumbled non-stop. The ancient aura was like the arrival of a primordial immortal emperor. The 7 or 8 senior experts of the insane sect were sent flying while coughing blood. Gu Qingyu was covered in blood. He was holding a gourd with both hands. No, it was 9 connected gourds. The emperor aura was so strong that it was like a primordial immortal emperor had arrived in person. The immortal gourd dragged Gu Qingyu out of the main hall. Jiang Jingtian and Chitian Monkey King grabbed Gu Qingyu's legs. The long spear in their hands pierced through the ground, but they were still dragged away by the immortal gourd. Whoosh! Emperor Feng, Lin Wutian, and Xiahou He rushed forward with all their might. They grabbed Jiang Jingtian and Chitian Monkey King again. The 8 of them formed a line, but the immortal gourd's power seemed to be terrifying. It rolled up the space and wanted to leave this place. Buzz! The immortal gourd emitted immortal light. Strands of immortal aura emitted rune law, indicating that its existence must be supreme. It was at least an immortal treasure used in the 4th form of the immemorial realm. It might even be a primordial immortal emperor immortal weapon. Chu Shi and his siblings also rushed out. The 3 of them joined hands to form a seal. They suppressed the immortal gourd from the sky, trying to force it back to the ground. 3 people pressed down and 8 people pulled, but they couldn't suppress the immortal gourd. Boom boom boom. Whoosh! The terrifying aura grew stronger and stronger. It alarmed Yi Qinghan. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan directly rushed out of the main hall and saw the divine light radiating in all directions. Some of the divine inscriptions had been activated, and the sharp aura pierced through the mountain rocks. It definitely had the power to kill 1st and 2nd level cultivators. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. He locked onto the immemorial sacred weapon and waved his hand to grab the immortal gourd. But the huge hand was shattered by the divine runes around the immortal gourd. It was useless. Bang! Yi Qinghan stomped his foot and rushed toward Gu Qingyu. The veins on his right arm bulged. His 5 fingers could crush stars. He grabbed the ancient immortal gourd's hollow. Boom! Bang! Yi Qinghan mobilized the power of human Tao. The flame ancestor's right arm exploded with power and pulled the immemorial yin-yang sword to the ground. He then pressed the immemorial yin-yang sword on his right hand, firmly controlling the immortal gourd. Hada! Yi Qinghan roared. He flipped his right hand and pressed it against the immortal gourd's mouth. The power that could suppress stars was barely able to suppress the immortal gourd. What is this? Yi Qinghan's veins bulged. His veins were clearly visible. The veins on his forehead were about to burst. The Chu siblings opened their eyes wide and shouted excitedly, "This is the immemorial 9-air chain gourd. It's 9 gourds that grew from an ancient vine. They linked together to form a huge gourd. It was refined into a 9-air chain gourd by a Grand Supreme. Once it recognizes an owner, it can be used to devour 4th stage existences." Buzz! The 9-air chain gourd wasn't willing to be suppressed, but Gu Qingyu had pulled out the immemorial rune that suppressed it. Unless a powerful being came to suppress it, it wouldn't be easy to subdue it. Suppress! Yi Qinghan's right hand was holding the sword to suppress the 9-air chain gourd. His left hand was bitten, and the blood of the infernals flowed out. He quickly drew a seal in the air and pressed it against the 9-air chain gourd. "Come, Qingyu," Yi Qinghan said, "this is what you found. Try and see if you can refine it." The 9-air chain gourd's impact was too strong. Yi Qinghan couldn't suppress it for long. He could only hope that the insane sect could quickly refine it and make it recognize him as its owner. Gu Qingyu excitedly bit his finger and drew a seal into the immortal gourd. Unfortunately, the immortal gourd blasted the seal away. It didn't recognize Gu Qingyu at all. Jiang Jingtian tried a 2nd time, but still failed. Chitian Monkey King, Lin Wutian, and the others all tried once, but none succeeded. A glint flashed across Chu Shijun and the other 2 siblings' eyes. They seemed to want to give it a try. Yi Qinghan was sweating profusely. He couldn't care less. He could only say, "Try it quickly. I can't hold on much longer." Unfortunately, even though the 3 had heaven-defying cultivation, they still couldn't get the immortal gourd's approval. Yi Qinghan's eyes were red. How could the insane sect give such a good treasure to his enemies if they couldn't refine it? Seal, puff! Yi Qinghan directly bit his tongue and spat out a mouthful of essence blood. He used his mind to form the mark of the ancient Yen tribe, the mark of the emperor, and stepped into the divine gourd forcefully. The gourd immediately shone with divine light, as if it was about to explode. Its laws reached the heavens and the earth, attracting the sun, the moon, and the stars. Its power instantly increased by several times, almost breaking free from the right arm's control. Chapter 2636. It wasn't that the flame ancestral arm wasn't strong, but Yi Qinghan's current state was too weak. He couldn't control the flame ancestral arm, nor could he suppress the 9-air chain gourd. The Emperor's seal didn't suppress the gourd. Instead, it stimulated it and awakened it completely. The primordial divine treasure was a legendary existence. At this moment, it broke free from Yi Qinghan's restraints and shone with celestial light. The 9 gourds swallowed up all the celestial spiritual energy from the mountains and rivers. The entire Jiangnan Immortal Valley was almost filled with celestial spiritual energy. Buzz. The 9-air chain gourd continued to release immortal spiritual qi, shaking the mountains and rivers. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and crossed his palms in front of his forehead. He formed another seal and covered the 9-air chain gourd with his divine will. He wanted to connect with the drop of essence blood in the gourd. He wanted to control this immemorial godly treasure. Everyone from the crazed manor looked at Yi Qinghan nervously, while the 3 Chu siblings stared with wide eyes. Yi Qinghan's body was dragged off the ground, and the shroud on his corpse fluttered in the wind. His black hair fluttered behind him like sharp steel needles. At this moment, he was in an extremely dangerous situation. It was very likely that he would be flung halfway up the mountain by the 9-linked gourd. Once he smashed into the divine inscriptions, it was very likely that he would be severely injured or even die. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Yi Qinghan stared at the 9-air chain gourd. He formed a seal with his 10 fingers and 6 fingers connected. At this moment, his aura was as strong as the sky. He was like an immemorial god of war. His aura was getting stronger and stronger, forming a domain around him. Who else in this world can do it but me? Boom, Yi Qinghan roared. His voice shook the sky and forced into the 9-air chain gourd. He wanted to suppress the gourd by force. Buzz. The 9-air chain gourd had its own consciousness. It only recognized the strong, the true strong. However, Yi Qinghan's Tao heart and aura made it hesitate. It wanted to leave but didn't want to. His handsome face was domineering and arrogant. Who else in this world can do it but me? I'll take you to the god-suppressing immortal slaying world. Boom, Yi Qinghan reached his hand out to the 9-air chain gourd and said domineeringly. Hum. The 9-child ringed gourd shone with dazzling light, and its innate primal chaos aura crushed all doubts. This was a natural divine treasure, and after being refined by a supreme being, it really wasn't something that an ordinary person could control. You're not worthy for now. The 9-linked ring gourd actually vibrated out a melody, and the tender voice of a child was very crisp. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed with sharpness as he coldly replied, We will only know if I'm worthy or not after we fight. At the same level, I'm invincible. I wouldn't lose out to the supreme ancient immortal emperor when he was young. Now that you don't want to assist me in becoming an immortal emperor, would I still need you in the future? If you don't accompany me in my sunset, why would I need you to add flowers to my brocade when I'm glorious? Whoosh whoosh whoosh, the 3 Chu siblings looked at each other. Yi Qinghan's words had exposed his ambition. This time, he didn't want to protect anyone from becoming emperor. He wanted to become emperor himself. Kuang Zong was excited. They were really afraid that Yi Qinghan was protecting someone else. Prove it to me. Buzzed at the 9-linked ring gourd trembled and slowly landed on Yi Qinghan's shoulder. Whoosh that Yi Qinghan grabbed with his hand, and the berserk chaotic saber billet was already formed. The aura of a golden immortal surged and the saber radiated in all directions. You guys stay here. I'll go kill them. Yi Qinghan looked down on everyone and stepped toward the entrance of the valley. His footsteps crushed the rocks. He couldn't use the immemorial Yin-Yang sword or the human Tao Emperor Pagoda, but he could use the 9-linked ring gourd. Even if it wasn't the Taigu Emperor's army, it wouldn't be a problem to suppress the 4th form. Everyone from Kuang Zong was stunned when they saw Yi Qinghan's back. Then, Lin Wutian followed without hesitation. The older generation of Kuang Zong wanted to follow, but Emperor Yi quickly said, I'll go with Wutian. You guys stay here and guard the Jiangnan Immortal Valley. Don't let anyone take it away. With that, Emperor Yi carried his guqin and stepped into the void. He quickly followed Yi Qinghan out of the valley. Yi Qinghan sensed the two behind him, but he didn't turn back or stop them. He just slowly walked toward the center of the void ridge. Of course, he had a fixed target. Zun Long Ho, Tai Zun Ho, or Tai Jiang High Priest. It all depended on which of the three was unlucky. These three were people Yi Qinghan had to kill. It wouldn't be good for anyone to come. Tap, tap, tap. Yi Qinghan seemed to be moving slowly, but in fact, he was moving quickly. He covered 1,000 meters with each step. He moved quickly over the mountains. Some forces were looking for suitable mountains and valleys to set up camp. They relied on ancient palaces for defense, but they didn't dare to move because of Yi Qinghan's berserk chaotic saber billet. Yi Qinghan didn't even look at them. He directly flew over the mountains and rushed into the distance. Lin Wutian followed closely behind with his sword. His eyes flashed as he looked around. Buzz! The sound of nature played the song of mountains and rivers. The rumbling melody reverberated through 1,000 miles, and an austere air filled the air. Ren Huangyi played the guqin in order to attract the person in the fourth state over because she knew who Yi Qinghan wanted to kill. The first person in the fourth state appeared. It was the ancient heavenly emperor. The ancient heavenly emperor stood on a mountain peak, his aura bursting out. Li Peiza, Su Zhan, and the others were halfway up the mountain. It was obvious that the people of the ancient Emperor Academy had already occupied a huge ancient force's ruins. The ancient heavenly emperor's eyes flashed as he stared at Yi Qinghan, who was speeding over. He felt that his aura was different from before. Previously, he was very low-key and didn't want to participate in the battle. Now, he was actually taking the initiative to fight. It seemed like he was here to kill. Li Peiza and Su Zhan's eyes were like torches as they looked at Yi Qinghan walking over from the depths. They sighed softly. Back then, the two of them had helped Yi Qinghan endure the broadcast of the hunt. They were still weak, but thousands of years later, Yi Qinghan was actually on par with people in the fourth state. Li Peiza and Su Zhan weren't jealous of Yi Qinghan's achievements because they weren't weak themselves. They were now ranked as kings of the same realm and were almost comparable to second-stage cultivators. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Following that, more than 10 experts with soaring auras appeared in the central area. They were all staring at Yi Qinghan. Jingfan Mountain Lord appeared, and Wujifeng Mountain Lord arrived with a large group of experts. True peerless experts didn't like to hide. They wanted to be the first to start a war and proclaim themselves as emperors. They didn't want to give others a chance. The district mistress and Gu Jiutian both appeared with their followers. They stared at Yi Qinghan with anticipation, hoping that this time around, Yi Qinghan would express his stance on who to protect. Countless experts from the supreme ancient immortal realms appeared. The war was about to erupt. I'm here to kill someone. Everyone wouldn't have any objections, right? Yi Qinghan landed on a tall mountain. He had a long saber in his hand, exuding a tyrannical aura. The 9-ringed gourd on his shoulder retracted its aura, as though he had no intention to help. The supreme ancient immortal realms followed Gu Jiutian. The venerable dragon marquis was protecting a supreme paragon of the dragon emperor clan, a middle-aged man at the fourth state. As for the supreme ancient marquis, he relied on the power of the Eastern Emperor Immortal Bell and didn't express his stance on who to protect. Young man, don't be too arrogant. Among those at the third and fourth state here, which one of them is someone you can kill? A priestess at the fourth state spoke in a domineering manner. Yi Qinghan's eyes were like torches as he scanned the surroundings. He found the exact location of the venerable dragon marquis, the supreme ancient high priest, and the supreme ancient marquis. He had no choice but to give face to Gu Jiutian, at least for the time being. The only ones left were the venerable dragon marquis and the supreme ancient marquis. I want to kill the supreme ancient marquis. Yi Qinghan raised his head. His cold eyes flashed with ruthlessness as he spoke in a resolute tone. The Eastern Emperor Grand Sovereign's face turned purple. Dong Huang Ying's expression was even worse. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to target the Eastern Emperor clan the moment he appeared. Yi Qinghan calmly said to Lin Wutian and Emperor Yi, "The two of you stay here. I'll be back soon." What? Yi Qinghan flew into the center and walked towards the Eastern Emperor Grand Sovereign with his saber in hand. His aura surged as he said, "This battle has nothing to do with the title of king. I'm only here to avenge the 38,000 brothers and sisters of the Kuang Manor. I've said it before, the supreme ancient marquis must die. You guys better not object today." What? Yi Qinghan rolled up the mountain river painting and quickly stepped towards the Eastern Emperor Grand Sovereign. An ancient bell soared into the sky and rumbled endlessly. It was infinitely magnified, and the ancient vicissitudes of life rushed into the clouds. The Eastern Emperor Grand Sovereign glared at Yi Qinghan and said, "Little ant, you're just someone from a small plane. You're just a nouveau riche. You even want to kill this marquis. You must be tired of living." Chapter 2637. The painting of mountains and rivers moved and the sun set. A long black shadow dragged a 7-foot-long blade and silently walked towards the gathering place of the experts of the Eastern Emperor's bloodline. There was no need to say too much. The Eastern Emperor Grand Exalt was one of the people who had to die. Yi Qinghan wouldn't let him live. It was the same even if the Eastern Emperor Immortal came. At most, he could change the inheritance of the Eastern Emperor's bloodline, but he couldn't change the fate of the Eastern Emperor Grand Exalt. At this moment, the Eastern Emperor Grand Exalt took a deep breath and controlled the Eastern Emperor Immortal Bell. The pressure of the immemorial ancestral artifact was overwhelming. With a light tremble, the bell traveled thousands of miles, causing the souls of the gods to tremble. The Eastern Emperor's bloodline was one of the special ancient bloodlines. The Eastern Emperor Immortal Bell was also one of the immemorial sacred artifacts. At this moment, the Eastern Emperor Grand Exalt didn't care about Yi Qinghan. Instead, he looked at Yi Qinghan as if he was looking at an ant. Yi Qinghan grinned evilly. Looking at the Eastern Emperor Grand Exalt's ferocious expression, he said eerily, "I once told you that my dignity isn't worth just 300 million. You didn't believe me. You must be regretting it now." The Eastern Emperor Grand Exalt glared at Yi Qinghan and roared hysterically, "You ant, you are still acting like a despicable person even after gaining power. How can your lowly bloodline be worthy of my Eastern Emperor's bloodline? Even if you give me another chance, not only will I not help you, I will personally kill you." Slap. Dong Huang gave him a slap and coldly looked at the Eastern Emperor Grand Exalt. He scolded in a muffled voice, "Disappointing thing, you are still so stubborn at a time like this?" The Eastern Emperor Grand Exalt covered his face in shock. He didn't expect that Dong Huang would actually compromise with Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan's face was filled with killing intent. He wouldn't compromise at all and slowly walked towards the Eastern Emperor's bloodline. The other experts in the Fourth State did not have any intention of interfering. This battle had nothing to do with the title of king, it was just a personal grudge. Only the Duke of Zunlong and the High Priest of Taijiang held deep enmity towards Yi Qinghan. The two of them had already begun to move, preparing to find a good opportunity to strike. At this moment, Dong Huang said with a solemn expression, "Heaven-suppressing Marquis, this old man went to your Marquis conferring ceremony because I wanted to resolve our grudges. As the saying goes, if you want to resolve it, you shouldn't end it. You and my Dong Huang lineage owe each other a debt of gratitude, so you shouldn't have come to this point." This old man admits that all of this was caused by the unfilial son of Grand Exalt, but I don't think the 38,000 casualties of your Kuang Manor should be blamed on the Dong Huang lineage. When Yi Qinghan approached the Dong Huang mountain, his aura reached its peak. He asked calmly, "Then tell me, who should be responsible for these 38,000 lives? If you can convince him, then I'll leave. If you can't, then I hope Senior Dong Huang will give up on this son. Otherwise, it won't be just this Dong Huang lineage that will die in my hands. It might even include the entire Dong Huang lineage." Dong Huang took a deep breath and clenched his fists. He looked at the approaching Duke of Zunlong and said coldly, "The ones who killed were the Zunlong army, and the one who controlled it was the Zunlong Marquis. How could the Zunlong Marquis change his mind because of the words of a brat like Grand Exalt? Even if he was affected by Grand Exalt's words in the beginning, he could have changed his attitude after the broadcast. However, he didn't. Instead, he became even more determined to kill you and even destroy the Kuang Manor's army. Otherwise, why would he mobilize 3 million Zun Long army, Blood Dragon Guards, and Azure Dragon Guards? What? Boom. The Zun Long Marquis was furious. He slammed the heavy spear in his hand into the ground and his aura exploded. He pointed the spear at Dong Huanging and shouted, "Dong Huanging, I didn't think that the ignorant brat you raised would be so shameless as well. If it wasn't for the Eastern Emperor Grand Exalt, this Marquis wouldn't be prejudiced against Yi Qinghan. I would even help him reconstruct his body, and there wouldn't be such a game. Today, I wanted to help the Eastern Emperor's bloodline, but it seems like this Marquis was really blind." Yi Qinghan smiled coldly. Looking at the dogfight, the killing intent in his eyes grew heavier. Thinking back to the time when the Quang Manor's army of 900,000 was willing to die for him and left behind a large number of corpses, he was furious. The 7-chi heavy spear shot out with profound mysteries. Holding the mountain and river painting, Yi Qinghan slowly raised the long blade. Ka. Yi Qinghan twisted the tip of his foot, causing the ground to shatter and the mountains to tremble. You can't convince me, but killing the Zun Long Marquis first is understandable. Boom. What? The blade flashed, tearing through the void and slashing at the Zun Long Marquis. The veins on his right arm bulged, and his strength reached the heavens. The Zun Long Marquis's aura stagnated. He didn't expect to be dragged into this personal grudge. Boom. Bang. The Zun Long Marquis raised his spear and smashed it at the incoming heavy spear. A heavy spear and a heavy spear smashed at each other with the force of thunder. Sparks flew in all directions, and flames overflowed into the sky. In the blink of an eye, they smashed together. 1. The impact was like a star exploding, and the shock waves spread out in all directions. The two divine weapons were made of special materials, so they weren't damaged in the slightest. However, their bodies were almost shattered by the shock wave, and they both retreated dozens of steps. The ground was crushed by the two. The Zun Long Marquis's face was filled with disbelief. The web between his thumb and forefinger cracked, and his right arm trembled, almost losing feeling. However, Yi Qinghan's right arm wasn't injured at all, and only a little blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. However, what he didn't know was that Yi Qinghan's internal organs had almost shifted. Impossible! No matter how strong your body is, it's impossible for you to fight against me at the first-degree realm. The Zun Long Marquis roared in doubt, and a cold light flashed as he roared. The Flame Ancestor's right arm is in your hands, and it has been refined by you. At this moment, it wasn't just the ancient heavenly emperor. Even the other fourth form people were staring at Yi Qinghan. So what if it is? I don't have the bloodline of the ancient gods, nor do I have a special bloodline, and I'm not of the ancient immortal bloodline. The ancient heavenly emperor can't completely merge with the Flame Ancestor's right arm, but I can. Yi Qinghan's aura surged again, and with both hands on his saber he roared, "Today, I'll use your head as a sacrifice to the 38,000 lives of the Quang Manor. In the future, I'll slaughter your entire Zun Long army." Boom! Yi Qinghan rushed up again, and his saber radiated boundless light. Just this aura alone was enough to kill a first-degree realm cultivator. Boom boom boom. Bang. After all, the Zun Long Marquis was in his fourth form. Although he was much weaker than the Endless Peak Mountain Master and the ancient Heavenly Emperor, he was still in his fourth form. At this moment, he was controlling his mystique with a ruthless aura, and his heavy spear smashed Yi Qinghan back dozens of steps. Not daring to use the Yen tribe's mystiques, Yi Qinghan was still a distance away from the fourth form. At the beginning, he might be able to fight evenly, but he was gradually losing. However, Yi Qinghan wasn't going to rely on his own strength to kill the Zun Long Marquis, but to prove to the 9 Linked Rings Gourd that he could fight a 4th-degree realm cultivator as a 1st-degree realm cultivator. How could he not have the potential to be an emperor? Hua. Boom! Yi Qinghan swung his 7-foot heavy spear in a circle and radiated boundless light, shattering space and time. His fiery sun mystique was used, and the scorching sun filled the sky. The inheritor of the great sun immortal emperor couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't expect Yi Qinghan to know the fiery sun mystique. How does he know such a great mystique? Has he entered crying Ghost Ridge? The inheritor of the great Sun Immortal Emperor subconsciously regarded Yi Qinghan as one of his own. He decided to subdue Yi Qinghan and make him his strongest follower. Hua! The inheritor of the great Sun Immortal Emperor waved his hand, controlling the mountains and rivers. The sky surged, and the situation changed rapidly. Even Yi Qinghan and the Zun Long Marquis were affected. The 7th level of the fiery sun mystique. Hua! In an instant, the light filled the sky, and the white light covered the eyes. No one could see beyond their 5 fingers. Dong dong dong. The emperor drum of the great sun shook the heavens and earth, commanding all the Tao in the heavens. Yi Qinghan, I will help you kill this Zun Long Marquis, but you must submit to me. The inheritor of the great Sun Immortal Emperor said plainly. He swept his heavy spear horizontally, wanting to shatter the blade formed by the drum wave. However, the drum wave was formless and directly passed through the heavy spear, ruthlessly smashing into his chest. On a poof! The revered Dragon Marquis chest caved in as his internal organs were nearly shattered. He spat out a large mouthful of blood as he flew backwards, completely losing control of his body. Die! Yi Qinghan stomped the ground, and his right fist smashed through the void towards the revered Dragon Marquis. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan's figure was extremely fast. He caught up to the revered Dragon Marquis in midair and smashed his head with a fist. One that the revered Dragon Marquis brains seemed to be about to explode. His vision turned black and he fainted. His physical body obviously couldn't withstand the flame ancestor's right arm, let alone the more fragile brain. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. More than 10 first-degree realm experts under the revered Dragon Marquis rushed over, wanting to save him. Lin Wutan was about to unsheath his sword, but was held back by Emperor Yi. Husband is establishing his authority, and also proving to the 9 sons chain ring gourd. We don't have to make a move for now. Emperor Yi said calmly. Boom! Hua Yi Qinghan knocked out the revered Dragon Marquis and took the opportunity to kick his chest, causing him to faint completely. He turned around to look at the first-degree realm experts who were rushing over. The veins on his right arm popped out as he punched the immortal sword of one of the first-degree realm experts. The immortal sword was bent from the impact, and the fist didn't stop there as it landed on his chest. Gotcha! Several ribs in his chest were broken. The first-degree realm expert couldn't even take a punch as his body exploded into pieces. Boom! Yi Qinghan's footsteps intertwined as his fist turned into an elbow, and his elbow hit the throat of the first-degree realm expert. He couldn't even take a breath as he fell heavily onto the ground. Swoosh swoosh. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed as he calculated the speed of the first-degree realm experts. He locked onto the frontmost expert and waved his hand to grab the immortal weapon. His left hand grabbed onto the neck of the first-degree expert and pulled him back viciously. His left knee kicked upwards, directly hitting the back of his neck. Crack crack crack. The second first-degree realm expert's neck was broken as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Piak! Yi Qinghan was as fast as lightning as he displayed his close combat skills to the maximum. He snatched the immortal weapon with his bare hands and threw it towards the expert who was charging over from the right. He stopped the opponent for a moment before his right hand turned into a blade and slashed the neck of the first-degree realm expert, almost shattering his neck. Boom boom boom. Swish swish swish. Swish swish swish. Yi Qinghan was as fast as lightning as he charged into the encirclement. He charged straight through, punching the immortal weapon and stepping on the first-degree realm experts. A bunch of ants, how can you control my life and death? Piak! Yi Qinghan's slap was even more powerful than the immortal weapon. When it landed on the opponent's face, his face was distorted and his teeth were pulled out. In the blink of an eye, the 10 over first-degree realm experts who charged over were all stepped on. Some fainted and some were heavily injured. He didn't use any divine weapons and relied solely on the power of the flame ancestor's arm and his own fighting skills. At this moment, revered Dragon Marquis slowly regained consciousness, but before he could stand up, Yi Qinghan's figure flashed and stepped on his chest. He squatted down slowly and his right hand locked onto revered Dragon Marquis's neck. he said in a sinister voice. 2 hours ago, did you think that it was impossible for me to kill you? Revered Dragon Marquis's face was malevolent as he struggled unwillingly, trying to escape from Yi Qinghan's control. Unfortunately, the power of the Flame Ancestor's arm was not something he could break free from. I've said it before, you must die. Revered Marquis will also die. Both of you, don't blame each other. I will kill both of you in front of Kuang Sek's martyr's tomb. Yi Qinghan said in a sinister voice. Yi Qinghan, I only regret that I didn't kill you personally back then. Revered Dragon Marquis roared. Yi Qinghan smiled silently. He waved his hand and took down the 9-linked gourd on his right shoulder. He opened the gourd and directly swallowed Revered Dragon Marquis. There's no medicine for regret in this world. Yi Qinghan stood up, the burial cloth fluttering in the wind. His eyes scanned the surroundings and finally locked onto the Dragon Emperor Immortal Empire's supreme being. He said indifferently, this is a private matter. Kuang Sect has no intention of going against your immortal empire. That middle-aged man's eyes flashed. Revered Dragon Marquis was a huge help and was killed by Yi Qinghan just like that. If he didn't do anything, wouldn't he be considered a coward? Who would be willing to follow him then? That middle-aged man's hand shook and an immortal sword appeared. With a flick of his finger, the sword tip was unsheathed and the sword light pierced through the clouds. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. Seeing that the other party was about to make a move, he remained silent. The 9-linked gourd landed on his shoulder and his left hand sank down. An immortal sword fell down and his left hand grabbed onto it. He slowly raised his left hand and his right hand grasped the sword hilt. Only 1/5 of the sword tip was unsheathed and a ray of sword light stirred the world. Its aura was monstrous. Immemorial Yin-Yang sword. At this time, all the experts in the 4th form sucked in a breath of cold air. Their eyes shone brightly and they were almost drooling. Yi Qinghan looked up at the Dragon Emperor Immortal Empire's supreme being and said indifferently, I don't want to go against your immortal empire. I wonder if your immortal empire is willing to accept the friendship of my Kuang sect? At this time, Yi Qinghan couldn't use the immemorial Yin-Yang sword at all. Unsheathing 1/5 of the sword tip had already used up 80% of his strength. He was just trying to scare this supreme being. The ancestral flame arm, the 9-linked gourd, and the immemorial Yin-Yang sword. These 3 supreme treasures allowed Yi Qinghan, who was only at the first stage, to suppress this supreme being in the 4th form. Since there were many people in the insane sect, they obtained the most treasures. Chu Shi and his siblings only wanted the best and left the low-grade treasures to the insane sect. After all, they had no use for some of the treasures. Since they could maintain a good relationship with the insane sect, why not? The kings of the insane sect's private army were not in a hurry. They quietly guarded above the valley. Even the slightest movement would make them tense up. The military drums would sound at any time. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 3 figures flew through the air. They were Yi Qinghan, Emperor Yi, and Lin Wutan. Dong dong dong, the military drums shook the sky. The kings beat the drums and the big shots flew through the air. The 3 of them were too fast. The 300 kings of the insane sect's private army did not recognize Yi Qinghan before they beat the drums. When Jiang Jingtian and Gu Qingyu appeared, Yi Qinghan had already landed at the entrance of the valley with a smile on his face. Brothers, look who I've brought. The revered Dragon Marquis was forced out of the gourd. However, before he could escape, Yi Qinghan grabbed him by the back of his neck. Yi Qinghan had a smile on his face as he dragged the revered Dragon Marquis into the valley. When the insane sect's people saw Yi Qinghan carrying the famous revered Dragon Marquis, their eyes almost popped out. The big shots of the insane sect did not feel anything. They trusted Yi Qinghan from the bottom of their hearts. However, the kings of the private army did not feel the same. The revered dragon army had an extremely high reputation in the undying immortal world, especially the Dragon Emperor Immortal Empire's revered dragon army's commander. He could control the Blood Dragon Guards and Azure Dragon Guards. The kings of the insane sect's private army immediately felt respect for Yi Qinghan. Good. The big shots of the insane sect were excited. The revered Dragon Marquis's army had killed so many soldiers of the insane sect. If they did not kill the revered Dragon Marquis, no one would be happy. Boom! Yi Qinghan casually threw a punch at the back of the revered dragon soldier's head, knocking him unconscious and destabilizing his qi and blood. Then Yi Qinghan sealed his meridians and threw him into the encirclement. Brothers and sisters, let's talk. Should we kill him now or wait for me to capture him and kill him together? Yi Qinghan's aura was restrained but domineering. It was as if he could kill the revered Dragon Marquis like killing a chicken. The insane sect's people looked at each other and hesitated. If they did not kill him now, they were afraid of accidents. However, if they did not kill him in front of the martyr's tomb, how could they face their dead brothers? Yi Qinghan saw their hesitation and said confidently, "If we don't kill him now, I'll throw him into the human Tao Emperor Pagoda. If we rely on people, they will run away. We will rely on ourselves." Yes. Everyone from the insane sect was excited. Who didn't want to become an emperor? Who didn't want to become an immortal emperor in their own force? If one person became an emperor, the entire sect would ascend. Chapter 2640. Yi Qinghan was going to become an emperor. This was something that was set in stone. Chu Shixian and the other two siblings looked at each other, their eyes flickering with divine radiance. They looked at Yi Qinghan. Although his cultivation realm was low, he had everything in his favor. Becoming an emperor was something that would happen sooner or later, unless everyone was against Yi Qinghan right now. Yi Qinghan was supreme being Ye's master. How could he not be treacherous? If he didn't take sides now, the boss, ancient heavenly emperor, and Jingfan mountain lord would all protect him. The others didn't want to offend him either. If they did, they might not be able to kill him, and they might even provoke a great enemy. No one would do something that was strenuous and unrewarding, especially when they were at the heart of the storm. The sense of danger was getting stronger and stronger. Everyone could feel it. Yi Qinghan didn't want to waste time, so he took out the resources in the immortal ring and distributed them to everyone. Everyone, go into seclusion. I will guard the entrance myself. Yi Qinghan said after distributing all the resources. Everyone from insane sect was shocked. Even Chu Shixian and the others looked at Yi Qinghan in disbelief. If you want to become an emperor, shouldn't you go into seclusion now? Chu Shixian reminded. Yi Qinghan looked at the entrance. He really didn't feel at ease letting others guard the entrance. It was definitely not realistic to let Chu Shixian and the other two siblings guard the entrance. Even if they wanted to, they couldn't treat them like outsiders. Yi Qinghan exhaled and said calmly, "It's fine. I will cultivate at the entrance. The star-twining vine will protect me. As long as I am here, no one will attack Jiangnan Immortal Valley for 1,000 years. It is different if others guard the entrance." Boss. Jiang Jingtian, Yan Ao, and the others were clearly unwilling. Yi Qinghan always took on the most tiring and difficult work, creating the best cultivation environment for insane sex people. Letting him guard the entrance at this time wasn't too good. Yi Qinghan instead said resolutely, "There's no need to say any more. I've already made my decision. If you feel sorry for me, why don't you just cultivate more, catch up to me sooner? When the time comes, brothers will attack Imperial Pass together with me. Wouldn't that be great satisfaction?" The heroes of the insane sect felt guilty, but who could oppose Yi Qinghan's decision? Who could object to that? Everyone looked at Emperor Yi and Green Lotus Sword Fairy. At this moment, perhaps only the two of them could oppose Yi Qinghan's decision. Emperor Yi shrugged and curled his lips without saying a word. He knew that there was only one woman in the world who could change his mind. However, it was not her, but Jian Chenxue. However, Jian Chenxue was not here. The first battle was with the Taijiang God clan and the Primordial God clan led by Gu Juten. In this battle, divine power filled the sky. The stars flowed in reverse, the void shattered, and noble planes fell one after another. The divine power of the divine will master god spread thousands of miles away, commanding the ancient gods in the world. The master god's power crushed the will of the gods. If Gu Jiotian obtained the divine will, immemorial god divine will master god's divinity, It would be hard to tell who would win between her and the owner. Gu Jiutian's realm was still too low. However, once she reached the third level, the immemorial divine will master God's divinity would definitely soar into the sky and seek its own master. At this moment, the ancient heavenly emperor did not help Gu Jiutian. Instead, he found Wu Juefeng again. When the two experts fought, no one dared to stand within 1,000 miles. However, the ancient heavenly emperor had lost the arm of the Yen ancestor and lost a great help. On the other hand, Wu Juefeng had the Mu Wu Shinshu. The two of them were evenly matched. The two of them were the epitome of the pinnacle of the human world. The Jingfan Mountain Lord did not immediately attack the fourth state. Instead, he led the 4 golden immortals of his Jingfan Mountain to attack the city, seize resources, and recruit experts. There were countless corpses under the feet of every emperor. There was no exception in every era. No one could become an emperor alone. They had to rely on the help of others. This was the fundamental difference between the primordial immortal emperors and the current immortal emperors. Back then, in the primordial immemorial era, if one wanted to become an emperor, they had to rely on themselves. No one relied on their clansmen or subordinates. They were truly invincible. Once they attacked, the heavens and earth would shatter. Mountains and rivers could not stop them. Even the heavenly Tao had to avoid them. In the Void Ridge, blood dyed the mountains and rivers. Every corner was not a pure land. Everyone wanted to quickly seize resources to grow. Once a small force was attacked by a large force, they would either be wiped out or submit. There was no third option. Bang! Hua! The mountains and rivers reversed. The rumbling sounds were endless. The emperor's drum shook the heavens, shaking the hearts of the people. The inheritor of the great sun immortal emperor swept through the area, surrounded by hundreds of supporters. Countless people were killed. The weak did not even have the chance to submit. Death was their best ending. Find the arrogant sex base. Kill them all. The inheritor of the immortal emperor held the Archean extinction token in his hand and said coldly, "Understood." The heroes bowed in response. This inheritor of the great sun immortal emperor was the strongest inheritor of the primordial immortal emperor to date. He had recruited many inheritors of the primordial immortal emperor. At this time, it was not only the inheritor of the great sun immortal emperor who was stronger. The second inheritor of the primordial immortal gods had also appeared. The moment he appeared, he shouted and thousands of primordial immortal gods gathered around him. The inheritor of the great Tao primordial immortal gods was a middle-aged man. His blood qi was righteous and he was arrogant. He controlled 6 great Taos. His words and actions were law. As he walked in the sky, the great Tao paved the way. The war lasted for 30 years. The third inheritor of the 5 elements primordial immortal gods had appeared. However, they had not obtained the third stage. The primordial immortal god personas had not come to find their masters. Once they reached the third stage, it would be the most violent battle. Those in the fourth stage had their eyes on these inheritors of the primordial immortal gods. They wanted to kill them in the cradle. However, would the primordial immortal gods allow that? At this time, even the 5 primordial immortal gods of the Qingzun immortal kingdom were starting to waver. Previously, they had pledged their loyalty to the owner because the inheritors of the primordial immortal gods that their ancestors had pledged allegiance to had not appeared. However, once they appeared, the owner would not be their first target of loyalty. Chapter 2641. At this moment, the mistress felt a sense of crisis. Her greatest helpers were the 5 primordial ancestor gods. Their elders all had a fixed target of loyalty. Before the supreme primordial overgods appeared, their first target of loyalty was the azure reverent immortal empire and the mistress. Sadly, the successors of the supreme primordial overgods kept appearing one after another. The mistress stared at the 5 supreme paragons. The 5 of them were the foundation of the azure reverent immortal empire. Sadly, once the king duel started and the successors of the supreme primordial overgods appeared, they would no longer be trusted by the mistress. 5 elders. I believe that in less than 100 years, the 6 successors of the supreme primordial overgods would all appear. If you all wish to leave, this mistress won't stop you. But please don't shoot me in the back or don't blame this mistress for not giving you face. The mistress reminded in a heavy voice. The eyes of Tang Zun, the supreme elder of the Tang clan, flashed. He had white hair and a youthful complexion. His divine arts were restrained and low profile as his divine robes fluttered in the wind. Although he seemed indifferent, he was actually considering his next move. Elder Jin Yang of the Primordial Gold faction, Elder Si Mu Chengfeng of the Wood faction, Elder Si Feng of the Wind faction, Elder Si Feng of the South and Elder Si Shuifu of the 4 Seas of the Primordial Divine Shrine. These 4 experts from the Azure Reverent Immortal Empire were all silently staring at the mistress. All these years, they had been receiving the offerings of the Azure Reverent Immortal Empire. Now that the successor of the 5 elements primordial overgods had appeared, how could they sit back and do nothing? Once the successor of the 5 elements primordial overgods broke through to the supreme primordial overgod realm, they would be known as emperors controlling the Tao. If they were firm supporters, they would definitely become supreme primordial divine generals in the future. They would be even stronger than the 5 immortal emperors. This was a huge temptation. Naturally, this was only one of the reasons why they chose to be loyal to the successor of the 5 elements primordial overgods. The other reason was even more important. The bloodline of the 5 elements primordial overgods was akin to the royal bloodline of the divine races. If the royal bloodline was killed, any of the 5 elements primordial overgods would be like slaves who lost their empire. This was something they weren't willing to see. The 5 elders from the 5 elements primordial divine shrine exchanged glances. They had already made their decision. What? The 5 old men simultaneously retreated 3 steps, then bowed and said, "Your Majesty, we are very sorry. The successor of the 5 elements sovereign has already appeared." Fu Long smiled as he bathed in divine light. The 5 elements master god weapon in his hand shone with a bright light, causing the souls of the members of the 5 great clans to feel enlightened. Their auras surged, and many people broke through because of the 5 elements master god weapon. Very good. We, the Fulong clan, will not mistreat our loyal subordinates. Rise, all of you, the Fulong clan said sternly. Sir. The 5 ancient gods in their 4th form were glowing with excitement. They were loyal to the Fulong clan out of gratitude, but they were loyal to the Fulong clan because of their bloodline and faith. That at this moment, the Fulong clan mistress sat quietly on the mountain peak, rubbing her forehead. Other than the 5 experts, there were no other experts in the celestial nation. After all, Emperor Taihao was old and not suitable to participate in the War of the Kings. She didn't have anyone she could use now. If Yi Qinghan didn't help her, she would have to rely on herself. In this era, there were too few people who could claim the title of emperor by themselves. It was too dangerous. Hiss! Hudat the Fulong clan mistress took a few deep breaths and exhaled. She looked up at the Milky Way. The stars shone brightly, enveloping the entire Void Ridge. The Milky Way reversal was the #1 ability below the immortal emperor realm. It made even a woman want to claim the title of emperor. Yi Qinghan, I hope you won't disappoint me. The Fulong clan mistress stood up slowly. Her aura was heaven-defying, as though even the heavens loved and cared for her. In an instant, the world rumbled. Boom, boom, boom. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The emperor drums thundered, and the master god weapon commanded the gods. The situation in the Void Ridge changed. Countless people changed sides and began to fight fiercely. In a short moment, countless people died. The ancient factions were recovering quickly. This was the faith and will in their bloodline. It wasn't something the people of this era could change. 6 inheritors of the master gods and 12 inheritors of the immortal emperors. Although only half of them appeared, it was enough to change the world. The world changed greatly. Boom, boom, boom. Buzzed at the emperor drums thundered, and the Taigu emperor unsheathed his sword. The situation of this era was destroyed. Everything was from the ancient times. The divine generals soared into the sky. No one hid their identity anymore, and each went to find their master. In the Jiangnan Celestial Valley, Yi Qinghan was awakened by the murderous aura in the Void Ridge. He stood up immediately. His aura was overwhelming. He waved his hand and grabbed the hilt of his blade. His eyes were as dazzling as the stars as he stared at the interior of the Void Ridge. Has it officially begun? Yi Qinghan's palms were sweating. Chapter 2642. Why don't you kill with me? These words were emotionless and sounded like the voice of a machine. Yi Qinghan pulled out frenzy and stared coldly at the descendant of the great Sun Immortal Emperor charging towards him. The nine-linked gourd had awakened. Although it was majestic, it was filled with hostility and destroyed the dignity of a sacred weapon. It could have become a demonic emperor but was stopped midway and refined. How could it not be violent? Killing is my favorite thing to do. A childish voice sounded from the nine-linked gourd and sounded very strange. It's also my favorite thing to do. Suddenly, before Yi Qinghan could reply, a second voice sounded from the gourd. Killing is so interesting. I like to eat the flesh of gods. I like to eat the flesh of the Yen tribe. I ate some years ago and could not forget it ever since. Soon after, 7 to 8 different voices sounded from the gourd. They sounded childish, but their words sent chills down one's spine. Yi Qinghan was stunned. This was the first time he knew that there were 9 demon spirits in the nine-linked gourd and almost became demonic emperors. It was a pity that they were trapped in the gourd and had no chance of reaching the demonic emperor realm. Gourd spirits. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, "Other than the flesh of the Yen tribe, I have no objections to eating anything you want." But why? Why can't I eat the flesh of the Yen tribe? The 9 gourd spirits asked at once. Yi Qinghan snorted and did not answer them. Instead, he unleashed his aura and locked his eyes on the hundreds of experts in front of him. There were 2 fourth-form Dao protectors, 5 or 6 third-form Dao protectors, and more than 30 second-form Dao protectors. Most of them were first-form Dao protectors and first-form Dao protectors. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and used his mystique to cut off the connection between the Jiangnan Immortal Valley and the outside world. A transparent barrier shone brightly, and the barrier was like a huge transparent jewel, shining with a myriad of colors. The descendant of the great Sun Immortal Emperor looked at Yi Qinghan with a sharp gaze and smirked. Yi Qinghan, I gave you a chance and you did not want it. Today, I will ask you again. Submit or die. Yi Qinghan sneered and replied coldly, choose your head. Even if I am an emperor, you might not be one. What do you have to make me submit? I am the sole successor of the great Sun Immortal Emperor. Is that not enough? The successor of the great Sun Immortal Emperor replied proudly. Yi Qinghan laughed mockingly. If the great Sun Immortal Emperor is alive, I will naturally submit without him saying anything. However, you are not worthy. Wang hummed at the great Sun Emperor sword in the hands of the descendant of the great Sun Immortal Emperor trembled slightly and was about to be unsheathed. He was furious. He walked towards it and said indifferently, the friendship of crazed abode extends to everyone. I don't care if you are the successor of the great Sun Immortal Emperor or his son. As long as you are not him, you better not be arrogant in front of me. Otherwise, not only will you lose our friendship, you will also lose your life. The successor of the great Sun Immortal Emperor looked at Yi Qinghan warily. The noble battle would take a long time. Although Yi Qinghan's cultivation level was low now, it did not mean that he would still be at the first degree realm in 10,000 years. He might be at the second degree, and in 20,000 years, he might be at the third degree. In the final noble battle, he might be at the 4th form and could challenge the Taigu Emperor at any time. Kill! The successor of the great Sun Immortal Emperor's aura turned cold, and he gestured to his 2 Dao protectors beside him. They were both at the 4th form. They were not as strong as the Primordial Age's 4th form, or even the ancient Heavenly Emperor. However, they were not opponents that Yi Qinghan could match. Whoosh! Hua! Yi Qinghan's figure flashed back and returned to his original position. However, he had the 9-beaded gourd and the immemorial yin-yang sword in his hands. The immemorial yin-yang sword was hidden in his sleeves and the 9-beaded gourd was in his hands. His aura was strong and his aura was strong. Together with the shroud, he looked like an ancient demon. Roar-dat-hua! The two fourth forms attacked at the same time, intending to crush Yi Qinghan. It seemed like they were not going to give him any chance. Yi Qinghan's immortal essence energy poured out and he formed seals with his palms. He activated the 9-beaded gourd's imprint of laws. Divine light filled the sky and the power of the sacred weapon was activated. The 9 demon spirits were all awakened and actively cooperated with Yi Qinghan to control the 9-beaded gourd. They wanted to swallow the sky and the sea. Even the sword chi from the fourth form was swallowed by the gourd. Hua hua hua! Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In an instant, the two fourth forms attacked with more than 1,000 swords. However, they could not even break the divine light of the 9-beaded gourd. Instead, Yi Qinghan was forced to retreat more than 10 steps. He almost retreated into the valley. His left wrist was a bloody mess and it was terrifying. Dong dong dong. Screech. Whoosh. The multicolored snake and the god-devourer eagle were in a violent state. However, the attacks from the fourth form were not something that they could withstand. But thousands of star-twining vines seized the air and attacked towards the back, surrounding these two fourth-state practitioners from the back. Every single vine was equivalent to a second-stage realm top expert's attack which was unafraid of death, so even the fourth-state practitioners had to be vigilant. Chapter 2643. Screech. The eagle soared into the sky and let out a long cry. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Tens of thousands of vines pierced through the void and attacked the two masters from behind. Each vine was like a peerless, ferocious beast that was ready to die. Screech. The two masters in the fourth form wielded their swords in all directions. A wisp of aftershock swept backward and actually crushed dozens of vines into powder. However, the countless vines were endless and restrained their attacks. Yi Qinghan immediately took advantage of the situation to stabilize their attacks. He stomped on the ground and began to counterattack. He held the gourd in his left hand and punched with his right fist. His blue veins bulged and his immortal spiritual power poured out. There was also some fierce human power hidden in it. Once the defense was broken, the human power could completely destroy the fourth form's defense. However, Yi Qinghan didn't dare to use a large amount of human power. Otherwise, it would be over if he was exposed. Boom. Bang. Yi Qinghan punched one of the old man's immortal swords. The immortal swords trembled rapidly and the frequency exceeded the limit. The old man's hands were numb from the tremors. Buzz. Screeched. The sword whistled in all directions. The old man's aura instantly stagnated. However, Yi Qinghan didn't retreat. Instead, he moved forward and let go of the 9-linked gourd. He waved his hand and slapped the ground. His long legs were in the air as he continuously kicked the fourth form. Bang bang bang. Boom. In a short period of time, Yi Qinghan gained the upper hand. The golden body of Paragon was invincible. His right arm hit the old man's right arm until it was numb. The old man's hand trembled and almost sent the immortal sword flying. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The 9-linked gourd flew into the air and the 9 mouths of the gourd swallowed the sky and the sea. Divine light enveloped the other master in the fourth form. Let me eat him. These old bones don't taste good. The 9 demonic spirits chattered non-stop in the gourd. Sometimes, they attacked with earth-shattering power. Other times, they erupted with heaven-devouring power. The mountain rocks and ancient trees were torn apart. It was extremely terrifying. The immortal spirit power in the Void Ridge was out of control. The area within 1,000 miles was completely out of control, forming a violent storm. The 9-linked gourd absorbed the power of heaven and earth to maintain itself. It almost erupted with its peak power and almost swallowed the master in the fourth state several times. Without a doubt, if a third-stage realm or fourth-stage expert controlled the 9-linked ring gourd, he could easily swallow a fourth-stage expert. The great Sun Immortal Emperor's inheritor had a cold look on his face.